I've never tried to define disability for myself. It's one of those things that you know about its existence. You see individuals that have challenges, but on a day-to-day basis, you don't really think about it as part of your life until it becomes part of your reality.
I like to put ability instead of disability. I like to say, okay, I'm disabled, but with lots of abilities.
All disabilities, people with disabilities, have challenges because they either have a physical or a mental function which isn't working just the way everybody else's works.
Do you know what a disability is?
My impression of a disability is someone who may just need a bit more time or assistance.
In my view, a disability is an artificially created circumstance. I'm totally blind, and yet for most of the time, I'm not disabled. For example, when I'm sitting in a restaurant and somebody hands me a print menu, which is usually what I get, I instantly become disabled. Some restaurants now carry a Braille menu. I'm no longer disabled.
It's easy for me to go to school, to run up the stairs, to go down the hallway, to buy a coffee, all those little things. And for someone with a disability, it's so much more than that.
A disability is only a detour to where you want to get to.
And it doesn't necessarily mean somebody in a wheelchair. It could be intellectual, it could be vision, it could be hearing.
Invisible or visible, sensory, mobility, intellectual, or mental health. That would be my definition of disability.
We're not talking about disabilities. We're talking about people with disabilities. So it's the person we're talking about.
I actually have never stopped myself since my disability of not going to a store, you know, women's clothing or a restaurant just because they have a step, because I feel that I want them to see me, how I had to get in there, because I obviously had to get help to just bump me up that one step.
The government has a vision of an accessible Ontario by 2025. There are examples already across this province of people moving to an accessible Ontario. So what makes a person's life inclusive?
Well, I've always known that the greatest barrier that people who are blind or others that are labeled as disabled face is not the physical inability, it's the attitude and perception of individuals, others, and society, but perhaps equally as important, the attitude and perception that we have of ourselves.
My life changed in an instant. You know, I was injured in a motor vehicle accident 17 years ago, and I think all my family and friends just did not know how to approach me actually and how to sort of handle it. And I think that what I found is that I was the one that was able to make them feel comfortable around me by sort of talking about myself.
So to make an accessible world for people, we have to start looking at communication.
I think it's usually the first few seconds is what it will take for the two people to be comfortable with each other, and then it's great from there.
A lot of people feel that because I'm visually impaired that I can read Braille. And I don't read Braille. I need somebody to read the menu for me. And I would like them to ask me what I would like. I don't want them to ask somebody sitting next to me, because I know what I like and what I don't like.
A lot of people have this notion that since you can't see, it really doesn't matter if you have dark brown shoes or black shoes.
Often, when we take down a barrier for one person or help to take down a barrier for one person, we put up a barrier for another. Many times you'll hear people say, well, he's blind, but he may not be blind. He may be a person with a visual impairment. He has different needs. People who are deaf have different needs than people who have hearing impairments.
It's kind of absurd how little we know about people with disabilities in comparison to the rest of the cultures and the rest of the different groups of people that we live amongst.
The first thing you have to do is look at yourself. That's where education starts. Government can tell you, other people can tell you, books can tell you. But until you sort of look at yourself and look at someone you know who has a disability, that's how you educate yourself.
If a person doesn't understand the disability, then they don't know maybe how to socially interact with the person with the disability.
All Ontarians believe in accessibility, and they believe it's the right thing to do. Accessibility is about social inclusion. For the world to be accessible, everybody has to be able to participate.
A fully accessible society is important for everyone. It will allow many of us to enjoy a quality of life that most others take for granted.
It's about you and I and people who have disabilities being able to do the same things. As a business, first of all, you have to have policies and practices in place that recognize that you're taking accessibility serious and that you're participating in breaking down barriers for people. It means that you have to make your staff aware and that your staff have to be trained in how to serve people with disabilities and to have an awareness of what of various disabilities.
There's so many different aspects in running a retail store, and I think the first and most important aspect is customer service. And so it starts with myself, being the owner of the store, that when I'm on the retail floor, that I ask customers how they're doing and if they're finding everything they need. And it's important that our managers do the same thing and our floor staff do the same thing. So it carries right through the whole organization.
Our designers wanted to hear firsthand from the customer. They wanted to understand, what does it really take to make an exhibit more accessible for someone who's blind or someone who's deaf or a person who has autism, for example.
Right.
So we put together a committee of 10 people, and all of these different disabilities are represented.
I think a lot of people with disabilities want to feel independent and want to shop in a store that treats them like everyone else.
I mean, we try not to treat the person differently. We certainly have to treat your situation differently and make sure that we can accommodate you.
The accessibility in a store will influence a lot my family directly.
It's the utmost importance to have complete accessibility, and it goes along with independence.
Mais un bon service à la clientèle, ça c'est de l'or, ça c'est précieux. Et ça va tellement avoir un grand impact sur moi que je vais retourner à ce magasin-là, mais sans aucun problème, j'y serai fidèle.
I believe that somebody that's providing customer service needs to ask the right questions. They need to ask questions. They can't make assumptions, and they have to be an active listener.
And if each person reaches out and does one little thing, we're saying customer service here. I don't like customer service. I like to say people helping people.
Astra, how can I help you as a retail owner?
Good service, friendly conversation keeps me coming back to the same store.
Persons with disabilities spend annually in Canada $25 billion. So it only makes sense that if you're in business, that you look towards that sector to improve your business opportunities.
And what does it end up costing me? I'll tell you, nothing. Very, very minimal. And what do I get in return? In the last 3 or 4 years, we've built 6 homes with varying degrees of accessible features in them. 6 sales that I would never have gotten if I hadn't even reached out and tried to make those accommodations.
So it's about incremental steps, and it's about small changes.
How can I help? Those are 4 great words. I had to count them up. How can I help? 4 great words, because they apply to anything.
That's a very warm and engaging thing to say to someone with a disability. How can I help you?
Often we're afraid to ask because we think we're going to offend, but sometimes the easiest way to learn is to actually ask the person about themselves and how can I help you to participate with me in whatever we're doing.
We all have to help each other.
By saying,
how can I help?
How can I help?
How can I help?
How can I help?
How can I help?